The cryptocurrency Bitcoin. I've done a few videos on it in the past, but nothing too tremendously substantial. The fact is, in terms of a currency, it's actually quite dysfunctional. It's touted as a great thing by libertarians, even some market socialists who've now created their own version of Bitcoin. But the fact is, as a currency, it's completely dysfunctional. Now here's a few reasons why that's true. A major problem with the currency is the fact that you can lose everything or a huge chunk of it through a completely ridiculous accident. Now here's a few examples of that. One man lost $600 worth because he reset his cell phone, which erased his Bitcoin wallet. Another man threw away his hard drive, which had his Bitcoin wallet on it. That had $6.5 million worth. I assume somewhere right now he's digging through a landfill trying to find it. Another guy lost $90,000 because he hit delete at the wrong time. These are pretty ridiculous circumstances, but it's important to note that these circumstances wouldn't have happened with a traditional currency. I know what you're saying, libertarians don't care about economic inequality. Okay, that's true. But actual capitalists know that this is a bad thing, and that when economic inequality happens on a large enough scale, this can destroy entire economies and hurt their ability to make money. So actual capitalists tend to avoid this. Now, on the other hand, libertarians see this huge gap between the rich and poor as some kind of a proof of the virtue of some people willing to work hard or go all the way to achieve and work really, really hard, which is why, Mexican migrant workers are rich people. But there's also a bigger problem here with this economic inequality. Many libertarians proclaim that Bitcoin won't act like a real currency where wealth concentrates in the hands of a few, because as usual, that's not real capitalism. Well, 47 individuals own nearly 1/3 of all Bitcoins. About 927 people control about half the entire currency. There's just over 1 million Bitcoin holders. Now, on top of this, there's been a study by Cornell University which shows that it would be very easy to create a cartel to control the currency. Just grab up a majority of it and you could make it crash overnight or raise it to dizzying highs overnight, depending on whatever it is that cartel wanted to do. Of course, this is one of those things that libertarians tout wouldn't happen in a truly free market. Yet we can very well see the insane instability of the currency as it actually functions. Anonymity is one of the big things that's touted about Bitcoin. There's no way for someone to know what it is that you're doing with it, except that that's kind of not true. It's actually very easy to track somebody with Bitcoin. Now let's make a comparison with cash here. If you go out and you buy something for whatever reason and you use cash, there's no way to prove where that cash came from or that cash came from you. So in other words, once it goes through enough hands, you pretty much can't trace where the cash came from. See, but the problem is you kind of can do that with Bitcoin because it literally does leave a trail. In the description, there's a link to a website that literally records Bitcoin transactions. Now I know what you're saying. It only records that the transaction takes place. It doesn't include who did it. Well, you see, that's the thing. It's all done electronically. It's done through the internet, which means the NSA can see everything. And if you think that the NSA can't get you, well, you're sadly mistaken. Now, it's true, a lot like cash, you're not going to be caught. They're not going to be able to track you unless they're already watching you, unless the NSA or the government is watching you for something. Then yeah, your transaction is pretty much anonymous. It's not just like anybody can go ahead and take a look at what you're doing. You would already have to be watched by government authorities, which isn't actually any different than using cash. If you're already being watched by the cops, then you're going to get caught. And in which case I would actually like to add that with cash, there's no paper trail or electronic trail as there would be for Bitcoin. So actually you can make an argument that general, regular, physical cash is actually more anonymous than Bitcoin is. Now there's other arguments we could make here, like sure, some hackers could build a really, really high level of encryption to protect themselves. But again, that's like making the same argument that someone could put all their money in an armored car and drive it from one bank to another. Well, yeah, you can do that, but not everybody can do that. That super high level of encryption is probably even less common than banks using armored vehicles to transport money back and forth. Yeah, there's some elite group that can do that, but the regular person isn't going to be able to do that. And if the cops are watching you, then that transaction is never anonymous to begin with. In fact, it's actually more anonymous and safer to use cash than Bitcoin because there is a permanent record that is kept online. The biggest reason that a lot of people support Bitcoin is an ideological argument, not a pragmatic one. It's all about the government can't trace it, it's out of the government's hands, it's free, and so on and so on. Meaning they're only touting its ideological advantages. But currency isn't used that way. Currency is used for practical purposes. It has to be useful in order for it to take off. That is why we stopped using a gold standard to begin with, because it was no longer practical to have one. This is the mistake that they're making. You cannot base a currency off of ideology. You have to base it off of utility. What Bitcoin can't do is prove that it's more economically viable than the US dollar, mainly because it's not. In every function of money, the US dollar does a better job of it, meaning the US dollar is literally more useful and more convenient than Bitcoin. This utility makes the US dollar superior to Bitcoin. The US dollar is more useful because of its flexibility, meaning its ability to inflate. This ability to inflate means that the currency is able to match the needs of the market, the functions of money, credit, liquidity, etc. Bitcoin can't do this. It has no flexibility. It's got a fixed way it can operate with the program that's written into it, how it functions. It's completely useless in this regard. It is not as flexible as a fiat currency. Fiat currency needs to be flexible. It has to be able to inflate when it's needed. Bitcoin can't do that. Bitcoin is ridiculously unstable. This chart clearly demonstrates the inherent unstable nature of Bitcoin. The price fluctuates so frequently that one day you have a decent amount of value and the next day you have half as much because of the whim and frequently the manipulation of the market. One day it's $1,200 a coin, the next day it's worth only $700. The reason for this is because Bitcoin is backed by nothing, not government bonds or central bank gold. It is, so to speak, an asset with no underlying asset. Its value is completely determined by the market, which here adequately demonstrates is completely irrational. This is why capitalists pushed for a central bank to regulate the value and supply of money to begin with. Generally speaking, shopkeepers are not going to want to use Bitcoin because of its unstable nature. Well, shopkeepers have to calculate how much they need to charge in order to keep their business running and to get a profit and whatnot. Now, if a currency is too unstable, well, they can't rationally plan that out, now can they? Now, in fairness to Bitcoin, on the actual Bitcoin Wiki article, they actually deal with this problem. The assumption is that Bitcoins must be sold immediately to cover operating expenses. If the shopkeeper's back-end expenses were transacted in Bitcoins as well, then the exchange rate would be irrelevant. Larger adoption of Bitcoin would make prices sticky. Future volatility is expected to decrease as the size and depth of the market grows. The solution to this problem, according to the Wiki article, is that it lies on the premise that the problem will go away once Bitcoin becomes the dominant currency. But it's not the dominant currency. So what exactly are they even arguing here? Oh, this problem will go away once everybody uses it, but people don't want to use it because of this instability. Well, this would be true for any currency. You could take anything and use that as a currency and you would have the exact same problem and solution. So it's not really saying anything here. I mean, if you really think that one day Bitcoin can overtake the US dollar as the dominant currency, that's absolutely ridiculous. And even if there were some fantasy scenario where it actually happened, by the virtue of that happening, there would be a ton of these cryptocurrencies floating around at the same time, also taking up a portion of the currency market, which means it still wouldn't be dominant because there would be all these competing currencies at the same time. The problem still remains. They continue. In the meantime, many merchants simply regularly pull the latest market rates from the exchanges and automatically update the prices on their websites. Also, you might be able to buy a put option in order to sell at a fixed rate for a given amount of time. This would protect you from drops in price and simply your operations for that time period. Now here's the problem with that. Merchants absolutely do not automatically update their websites from prices on exchanges. Merchants in the real world, constrained by geography and credit, can purchase only from those suppliers who are the most affordable. They cannot, by and large, travel to more competitive suppliers with increasing distance geographically. Shipping cost increases. Those suppliers, in turn, can only make so much profit as they are too constrained by labor costs, production costs, shipping and raw materials prices set by various exchange forces in the market. How could Bitcoin protect you from a market commodity price fluctuation? Does Bitcoin now ensure an infinite supply of raw materials, cheap labor, and free shipping? Meaning, this doesn't work out in real life. The final problem is Bitcoin's basis for utility. You have to want to use it. People have to be willing to engage with the currency. Now, given the inherent instability and other problems that I mentioned, shopkeepers don't want to use it. They don't want to take it. So where does this currency become useful? It becomes useful in the black market. That is not to say that people that use Bitcoin are black market criminals. What I'm saying is the currency itself is inherently unstable and not fit for modern capitalist society. It's just woven right into the function of the currency itself. People don't want to trade with it, so you have to take it where it is going to be traded. And that's going to be places like Silk Road. That's going to be used in shady areas like that. Because the currency won't act as a function of exchange in a manner that's necessary for the dominant capitalist system to function. So it's going to have to find other areas to be used. Now, if it can't actually function like a currency in that way, then it's going to function in other ways, like speculation. That's a big thing, is speculating on the price of Bitcoin. Now, when you do that, the currency actually acts like a stock and not like a currency. In the final, what I want to say is that Bitcoin was a good idea. The problem is its practical application in real life is not consistent with the mechanics of the capitalist system. They've based the idea purely on the believed mechanical process of exchange. But the fact is, exchange in a capitalist society is not mechanical. There are many other forces that affect it, like supply of raw materials, geographical locations, other things like that. Capitalism itself is an organic system with all kinds of different moments affecting other moments. Capitalism needs a stable currency in order to be able to rationally plan what people are going to do. Shopkeepers don't just speculate on what it is that they're going to get in. They have to plan. It's not a random guess. This solution offered to shopkeepers is completely irrational and doesn't work. The theory of what Bitcoin wants to be is not bad. The problem is currency doesn't function that way in real life. This cryptocurrency is a philosophical argument as opposed to a means of lubricating exchange. Bitcoin just can't function in a modern capitalist society. Thank you for watching. Go ahead, rate, comment, subscribe, share on various social media. And if you want, there's some other great content here you could check out.